be working. Okay, I've got
Already recording.
Yep, I turned it on. So I'm going to pause it.
Yes. All right. So last week we went through last month we went through a brief history of herbalism and kind of our Western herbalism roots. And I know that in the beginning, we had put out kind of a rough outline of what the progression of the, you're welcome. I like to share, Rivka. And I had them kind of in a loose order. And I did say at the beginning of last class that they might not go in that order. And because we got going on kind of constitutions and energetics at the end of that class, I kind of flowed into that instead of the one that was actually advertised. For this one was going to be plant categories. But I think flip-flopping those two topics, so we'll do the plant categories and the types of herbs and how they're used next time. This is going to maybe make a little bit more sense when we get into those uses. So just not very good at seeing the whole screen here at the same time, but did any of you, as we were talking about going on and finding your constitution and going online and looking up your dosha, did anybody actually do that? We want to put your hand up or put I did it in the chat or something like that. I'm trying to still look for people getting let in. So, okay, yeah. Elizabeth, what did you find out? Did you think that the information was pretty accurate? What did you know about your dosha or your constitution before you took that test? No. So what did it tell you? You could just unmute and talk.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did it that night, but so I don't know what any of it means now, but I remember it being fairly accurate.
Do you remember the words that they used? If it was vata, pitta, or kapha, or what combination they were?
Yeah, I wrote it down. So I had a vata for 40%, and then pitta and kapha at 30% each.
Oh, so you're fairly even. Okay. All right. We're going to talk more about that as we get going here. So I have a PowerPoint. That's my next thing, to try and figure out how to share my screen here. So just, oops, one step too soon. Here we go. And then who's ever coming on, you want to just go ahead and mute yourself as you're coming on. Let's see here. I'm going to try and make this bigger. Here we go. Still letting people in here, so I'm trying to multitask here. Slideshow. Here we go. Let's see if that worked. Okay. All right, so this is class number 2, and we're going to talk about energetics and constitutions. And here's my contact information. If you have questions afterwards, feel free to email me, all those good things. So let's see what happens here. And I can't get it to advance. Oops, oh sure, no, we gotta go back. My computer was just slow. Okay, here we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about patterns, body patterns, tissue type patterns, and how do we recognize patterns, and how do we recognize the conditions of our tissue states, and then how to apply that to using herbs and figuring out what's going to be the best remedies to employ or changes that we need to make in diet or habit that's going to help those tissues to balance out. So basically, we're looking at temperatures and movement when we're looking at the constitutional makeup of tissue. So we're looking at sort of this circular process of going from hot to cold, from damp to dry, and a direction of movement. So when we talk about heat, we're talking about an excited tissue state, not necessarily hot temperature, but hot activated sometimes is a way that shows up. Cold is depression or laxity or kind of a stagnation. And when you pair that with the damp, then we look at kind of soggy, boggy, stuckness, swellings, thicknesses, that sort of thing. And when it's paired with dry, for instance, then we're looking at withered, dried out, things that could benefit from oil or are withering away. And then wind is one direction of movement that we talk about, especially when it comes to things like digestion in the constitutional patterns, and that can have to do with tightness or spasm in different kinds of tissues like muscle tissue. Sometimes that can be a problem with wind. So these are some of the words and ways that you can start looking at tissue states.
That can mean rural patients wind up traveling hundreds of miles for care. Order is a professor.
My computer is being very slow tonight. Just doesn't want to go. There we go. So when we're looking at these qualities, again, we're looking at the balance between them, and we're using this earth, wind, fire, and water principle to also layer in with those temperatures. So and all of the different fluids that are moving in the body or not. So when we're looking at these in different ways of categorizing it, the doshas come from a practice of Ayurveda, which comes from India. And as we're looking at these different characteristics of hot and cold and damp and dry and the direction of movement, we're going to talk a little bit. I'm just going to read a little bit out of this book here. This is my teacher Margie Flint's book. And in this chapter here, she talks about the different conditions and the different doshas. And since it's really nicely written here, I'm just going to read a few excerpts. So when we look at hot conditions, excitation is that word that we're looking at. And we're looking at how does that show up? I'm actually going to see if I can back this slide up one. Not going to work. Okay, so anyway, we're looking at where does that show up? And when you think about someone that's hot, and when you think about someone that's got hot skin, like a burn, you see temperature. So we're looking at color. It's red. There might be pinkness around the ears. We look at the tongue. We check to see if there's a fever. We look at the color of the tongue. And if it's hot and red, We know that there's some excited somewhere in the body based on where it is in the tongue, some heat going on, and it's fiery. And people that have like acne that's red and hot and angry, that's the temperature with the water pairing of that wetness or that dampness. So we've got those kinds of baselines that we're looking to. Also think about people's personalities, because we're kind of looking at the whole person here. So we're looking at what's their emotional state like. Is it also heightened? Are they nervous? Are they restless? Are they wakeful? Are they having pain, like sharp, hot pain? That could be a heat in the nervous system. So we're kind of looking at that in those hot conditions. When we look at cold conditions, we're looking at things like paleness, stuckness, lack of oxygen, blue colors, skin that's cold to the touch, people that just feel like they're cold inside, people with things like anemia or low energy. They're just kind of not really moving about a lot. They're just kind of almost like so cold that they can't move. Dampness in cold conditions shows up with things again like swelling, edema, and that sort of thing. Young kids are all hot. Kids are in their kind of pitta or fiery part of their life. They're just burning energy constantly. And as we progress through the stages of being a human, most elders, if you can think about, really generally old people, they get kind of dried out and cold. And they're always wanting to put a sweater on and turn the heat up and those kinds of things. And that's a way that you can kind of think about that a little bit. So when we look to those damp conditions, move this over here a little bit more, we're looking for puffiness. We're looking for things like upsets digestion, food that doesn't metabolize very easily. We've got mucus in the system. We might feel like when you think about like a damp lung condition, when people have a cold that has a lot of mucus that builds up, that's a damp condition in the lungs. We look at things like what's that dampness being caused from? Is it that they're not absorbing the water, or is it that they're not processing their oils? And there's there's many different reasons why that can happen. And it could have to do with dryness, for instance, in the digestive tract. If the tissues are dry in the small intestine and not coated well enough to let the tone of the tissue support the food that's going through there and give it the flexibility that it needs to absorb the nutrition through the pores in the small intestine, we're going to have trouble with dryness. And so we want to look for things that are going to moisten that up, coat it, protect it, and tonify it so that those pores can work better to support nutrition and metabolism. So tension is for wind, and wind is oftentimes associated with the airy vata, which can also be a dry condition. And we're looking for things like, again, spasm, different problems with kinds of inconsistent symptoms that show up. So those are ways to think about the temperature. And now as we get into the dosha specifically, as you can see here, we have that vata, which is a combination of that air, which is movement, and the dryness. Vata people are irregular, and they're people that really need to have more oil in their bodies, on their bodies. They can be really dry skin. They can have rough inside and out. So that vatas like to have more oil, and they're usually tall and thin. They usually have kind of irregular facial characteristics, not quite perfect teeth. They have long bodies and short legs and those kinds of things, and they're just a little bit different all the way around. They don't eat on a schedule. They don't take supplements and things like that very regularly, and it can be hard for them to stay on sort of a regiment of anything herbal, like doing teas regularly and things like that. So trying to figure out how to get things in and on a person with that constitution as their primary dosha sometimes can be a little bit tricky. And Margie always says that a vata person needs a pitta partner to help them take their pills on time and make sure that they eat. So pittas are very direct. They're very scheduled. They're very heat in the middle. Our fire is burning constantly. We need to eat more frequent light meals so that we can keep that fire going. And they can be kind of a little bit high test, kind of irritable, can be sharp-tongued. Pittas have a lot of heat in their emotions and in their demeanor as well. So balancing out those things is one thing that we want to make sure of. Pittas are the kind of people that get hangry, and you just want to try and keep things consistent and smooth and even, and we want to kind of cool them off and balance them out. Kapha people are water and earth. They're the thick, solid, sort of bear-like constitutions. They may not move quickly, but when they move, they just keep moving and they just move right along once you can get them up off the couch. So that's the trick there, is that Kapha constitution tends to be a little bit less energetic in terms of exercise. They would rather do things that are a little bit more sedentary. They like sweet foods. They really want things to taste good. If you are working with someone that's got a Kapha constitution, the best way to get a remedy into them is to make sure that it appeals to that kind of sensation of sweet and heavy. So for them, we want to try and kind of fire them up a little and balance out that water and earth and give them things that are going to be more astringing and more heating. So is this making sense? Anybody have any questions? Okay. Rebecca raised your hand. Can you unmute and ask your question?
Yeah, I find it hard to know, like, if you have something that's out of balance,
Mhm.
it's hard to know which is your predominant. Like, if the symptoms are showing up, like for myself, for example,
Uh-huh.
I think I might be more pitta, but I have a lot of vata imbalance.
Uh-huh.
How do you determine which is like your predominant and which is like the out of balance?
Well, I think that just comes from like getting to know your own body better, and things like you want to look to what is it, well, how is it showing up? So if you feel more balanced when you're in your or pitta dominance, where you are feeling like your digestion is burning easily, you're staying on schedule, your skin is moist and it's staying oily and hydrated, those kinds of things, then you want to look to what, if that's not happening, what's going on with that vata impact. Is it that I have, you know, I drank too much green tea and now I'm kind of dried out? Is it that I didn't bring my water bottle with me, you know, for a couple of days and you're noticing like your lips are cracked and your hair might be feeling a little dry because of the environment that you're in? You know, so it's kind of taking a look at what's going on with my skin tone. We ask a lot of questions as herbalists when people are having a consult, and a lot of them have to do with what you're putting into your body, how it's processing, and also what it looks like when it's coming out and how does that process work. You know, so taking a look at your poop and finding out, okay, what's going on here? Am I dried out in my GI tract, and is it hard for me to have a bowel movement today? And is that my normal? Is it normally kids of people have a pretty fast transit time where you're going pretty regularly, pretty frequently, and those kinds of things. So if that piece is off for you, then those are some of the places to take a look. You can take a look. You know, one of the things that we practice a lot and when we're reading the body is looking at our tongues. And hopefully we're going to get to that a little bit here through these classes, to look to see if your tongue, start looking at it every day, everybody, and scrape your tongue in the morning when you get up before you swallow. And so you can get any of the stuff that your body is sloughing off in the nighttime, and trying to detox out of there, so you're not just swallowing it back in. But your tongue should be a nice pink color. It should have some moisture to it. It should have kind of what we call a deeply rooted coating. So if the coating doesn't look like you could scrape it off like a big white gunk, you know, and it should be smooth across edge to edge. And there, you know, if there's cracks in there or dried out spots, or it's patchy, or the color is, changing, those are the ways that you can tell what's going on in your body in terms of that heat and moisture and cold and dryness. Does that make sense, Rebecca? Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, it does. I think after hearing you talk, I may be more primarily vata, but just out of balance.
And you're really, really small right now, but if you stick your tongue way out like this.
I just ate.
But let's look at the shape of your tongue. Because can you point it? Can you make it pointy? Yeah, see that a pitta tongue is pointy and fiery and sharp, like the description. When you stuck your tongue out right away, it certainly wasn't pointy, and it was a little bit hard for you to point. And the vata tongue is more of that kind of U shape. It's like a little round on the bottom, but then it goes in on the sides and up a little. And then a kapha tongue is just like big and full and round and wide. So those are other ways that you can check which one am I more predominantly, and play around with that as you're learning how to read your body.
Thank you.
I'm gonna see if I can get this to advance. I don't know why we're having such slowness here. It must be the storm. There we go. So I learned about the humors from Jim McDonald, and this is another way. This is older medicine. This comes from Greek medicine, that these temperaments or these constitutional pieces are based on the 4 fluids of the body, and they carry the similar traits. So the way that this system is categorized is by the blood, the bile, the phlegm, and the black bile. But as you can see here, like this has a lot of huge detail, just like the doshas do, and it's similar but different. So we're looking again at this constant balancing act of what's the dominant resting tissue state and what is out of balance and what needs to move. So we're looking again at air and heat and dryness, intensity, and laxity, and all of these same things. And there's a great picture here. I don't know if you guys can see this, of a diagram of this process. As you can see, the arrows on the up in the bottom. We're constantly moving back and forth between all of these different areas and trying to find the one that is the best suited for our personal use. So the herbs have constitutions too, and they have temperature and they have directionality, and there's some of them have more fluid and are juicier than others. We use tastes as clues. That's called organoleptics. So we can also use organoleptics for noticing like the smells, if there's volatile oils, if the, so we're using like, how does it, if we notice it with our senses? When you take a bite of ginger, is it warming? Is it cooling? You know, you can tell right away it's different than a cucumber, you know? So those are the sensory clues that you're using when you're not only eating, but using herbs to figure out, okay, I know I need something that's more moistening. What am I gonna pick? And then, you know, starting with food as medicine, you can move into then, as we're learning more about the individual herbs, we're going to put them with these words and help you learn them. So again, we want to look at that tissue and find out what it is that we want to impact. So we do this in a couple of different ways. When we're using the law of similars, this is where we look at homeopathic remedies or like treats like. But in herbal medicine, we use the law of similars when we're working to try and facilitate a condition to help it work better. For instance, we can use herbs like yarrow or ginger to help move a fever that might be stuck and get it to get more active so that it will break and the pores will open and that body can then keep going on with its process of getting rid of whatever virus or bacteria or condition is gotten stuck in those tissues and helping them to not breathe. You know, a hot bath sometimes will do that trick too. So it doesn't always have to be something that you put in your body. So that's one way that we can use herbs to work on these kinds of conditions. The law of opposites is just the opposite of that. It's that we're trying to find the balance by using a remedy or a food or a treatment that's going to facilitate the condition in the opposite direction. For instance, if we have swelling, we're going to want to use an herb that's going to impact the fluids of the body, the lymphatics, and get that moving so that the swelling can be moved from the tissue. If we have a stomach that is not digesting food properly because it's coated with too much mucus, because that person is soggy boggy in their stomach and the tissue is just not active and constricting and moving things along, not fired up, we would use warming herbs, things that would help the stomach to activate its hydrochloric acid and other things to get it to turn on with more vigor. And the Doctorate of Signatures helps us to also learn about the plants and what they're good for. We talked a little bit about this last time, but just again, it's the way that a plant shows up for us. I have a herbalist friend that calls it one of God's winks, is that where it's growing, what it looks like, the color that is dominant in its leaves and the stem and the flowers gives us a clue as to how that might help us and whether it's going to be activating or particular to a particular organ system or tissue. So here's some examples. Not a very good slide, but you'll get the idea here. So kidney beans, look like a kidney. There's kidney beans. So constituents are different than constitutions. So the parts that make up the kidney bean that help us with our kidneys are some of the proteins and some of the sugars and starches. And so that's something interesting to consider. We look at this ginger root and we can see, again, it has an affinity for the stomach to a certain degree, depending on the person that needs it. And that's, again, the things that we want to learn about. So here's where we get to application. So looking at the current presenting tissue states, that's just a lot of questions and answers and thinking about it and breaking down those different parts of your body, like what's going on right now in the tissues of the lining of your mouth. Are your mucous membranes in there a little bit dry? Do you need some water? Do you need a mint? Do you have too much saliva? Does your tongue feel dried out? Do you have cracks in it? I'm drinking some green tea right now, which was probably not the best thing for me to pick when I was going to be talking, because green tea is astringent, and my inside of my mouth right now is a little bit more tonified than I'd like it to be for talking. So those are kinds of things that you look at. We look at what's going on with the skin on my hands. Are they dry? Are they sweaty? Are they red? Are my fingers cold? Am I pale? What are the colors that are showing up on my skin? Where do I have acne or bumps or itchy spots or dry patches? And then as we're looking through all of those things, we want to say, is this a chronic condition? Has this been going on? Have I had these little itchy bumps on the back of my arm for months or weeks? Or is this something new? Is this irritation from a rash or something like that? So, and then we want to see all of those clues and we wrap them together. And someone's got their hand up, or is that an old hand up? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
that was me again,
Okay.
Rebecca. I just wanted to ask a quick question about those bumps.
Mhm.
My husband has had those for years and years and years, and we've
Uh-huh.
never been able to understand what they are, like doing research online.
Uh-huh.
What
Well,
are those from?
it's it can be hormonal, but it can be just again a different dryness in the internal waters of the body. What you can try and do, which will probably work for you, and we'll be interested to hear a report back if you decide to play around with this, is try sage. So you take regular cooking sage, and if you think about a sage leaf, this is a perfect example of the doctrine of signatures, is that think about what a sage leaf looks like. It's
Mhm.
got those little bumpy, rough surface, just like this bumpy, rough skin on your arm and you make a tea out of it and you put it on there like a compress. So, and you can try that. That is a remedy that I learned from Margie Flint. So, and drink a little bit of it too, and just see how he feels with that. See if it, again, look to the other systems and see if you could take and put some breadcrumbs in a row that would maybe lend itself to matching that with what we just talked about. And then look up sage, Salvia officinalis, and learn the properties of it.
Sure.
So,
Thank you.
you're welcome. So, and then, yeah, so we're looking at the person, we're looking at the whole person, and we're getting to know the herbs and how they also have their own personalities. And I see Elizabeth has a hand raised.
Yeah, I have a question. So thinking on what you're saying, am I on the right track here? So like I deal with a lot of acne and it's usually food based. So like inflammation from an allergen or a sensitivity. And that would be indicated based off of like an inflammation or so, like with its red, raised, angry. Is that, am I on the right track there?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, and if we know that those foods are going to trigger us, you know, of course, the best.
And then we're bad and we just do it anyway, but yeah.
Yeah, you got to kind of pick your comfort level. You know?
Okay, awesome.
So,
Thank you.
yeah, Paul Bergner says, you know, it's like keeping the pot on simmer. You know, when you're constantly giving just a little bit of fuel to that allergy fire, so to speak, you're keeping your immune system kind of on trickle charge, and that downstream leads to things that are less acute and more chronic. So if it's every once in a while, I think that, you know, there's some wiggle room there. But if it's something that somebody knows that it was really affecting, you know, their gut or their achy muscles or those kinds of things, that we really need to just try and stay away from that stuff as best we can. All right, so now we're doing pretty good here. I've got some stop share. Got some herbs too. Walnuts and broccoli look like brains. You bet they do. And you know, what do we know about walnuts? I mean, we know that they're good for our brain. We know that they're full of great oils and essential fatty acids that we that are good for our cognition and our thinking and our brain tissue. All right, so now I'm going to try and do this here. I'm going to try and put it on speaker view. Let's see. I think Elizabeth, we still have you? Are you still unmuted? Can we mute you? No. Why is it showing you as the? I'm so bad at this sometimes. All right, back to gallery. Hopefully you can see this all right. Someone please say out loud if you can't, because I'm going to just start and move my computer over here. And
We can see you fine.
can you see this stuff here on the shelf?
Yes.
Is the light okay or is it bad?
It's kind of glaring on the jar.
Okay, let's see. How about that? Kind of lost where I am in here. And I guess it doesn't matter. As long as you just tell me if I go off screen.
We can't hear you if you're that far away from the computer, though.
How about this?
That's
Does that
good.
work? Okay.
Yep.
I have a few different herbs to try and give you some examples of these different properties. And I started out with, this is slippery elm. So slippery elm comes in like a shredded root form or a powder, which I actually used all of what I had left in my jar to make this. So I can't show you just that powder, but it's kind of a white, soft, got a very mild, almost sweet smell, flavor, and it's very mucilaginous. It's used to help soothe, coat, protect, lube things up, and really moisten tissues and coat them. So inside and outside, it can be used for heated, dried out conditions. And what I did was just put some slippery elm bark, maybe about a couple tablespoons in this just plain water, and left it on the counter. I started it on the counter probably about, I don't know, 12:30 or 1 o'clock, and it's just been sitting in the water. Now I'm going to show you how thick this gets. It's really goopy. Can you see how thick this is? I'm going to just try and pour it through here. And it's so thick, it's not even going through the strainer. It's just like sort of slimy. Jim McDonald, my friend, herbalist friend in Michigan, would call this a good slimification factor. Because normally if that was tea that you were straining, you know, if you were going to drink it with just plain water, it would have gone right through that strainer, no problem. So here's some of it that came through. Can you see how thick it is? So can you imagine if you had like really bad heartburn, stomach upset, heat, like hot burning stomach, how nice and soothing that would feel. Also, like if you had a really itchy, irritated, hot, dry condition, you could take some of that and you could just rub it on there. It's almost aloe-like in a way when you're using it that way. I got Matthew Wood's book here. This is one of his Materia Medica books. These are really well laid out. I like to use them as a reference. He talks about not only that this is for that, but he talks about the history of the herbs. It talks about the folk empirical use. He talks about the medical constituents and the nutrition and all kinds of things. So his books are really, really wonderful resources if you're looking to get some books.
Who wrote that?
This is Matthew Wood.
Thank you.
He's a very, very famous, accomplished herbalist, educator, teacher. He lives part of the time locally down in the Hudson area, but most of the time he is off and around teaching all over the world. So it's a lubricating substance, and it's used for lubricating old tissues. So you can also use slippery elm if someone's got a really dry, burning lung condition like bronchitis. Somehow our body knows, even though we're not going to pour that into our lungs, that when we drink it, somewhere in the process of our tissues, it gets the fact that this is going to go, and it helps to lubricate and soothe the lungs and give a layer of moisture. And it's a root, and it's used, it's actually a bark. I'm sorry. Did I say root? Thank you. Who's ever pointing that out in the chat. It is a bark. So my misspeak there. So that's a very mucilaginous herb for you to get to know. And there's others. This is kind of higher on that mucilaginous scale, but you could play around with things like chia seeds, flax seeds. If you soak them in the water and leave them on the counter like this, they're gonna do a similar floppy, gelatinous result that you can again use if you need to do some moistening and cooling. Most of these kinds of remedies, herbs or seeds have a lot of nutrition in them. They have what we call polysaccharides. They have plantain seeds. Yes, plantain seeds for sure. Those are maybe not as easy to get if you're trying to harvest them right now by yourself, but they grow all over the place in the summertime, and you can get them in commerce. Marshmallow root for sure. Marshmallow root. So on that bell curve, slippery elm is probably much more goopy and gloppy. Marshmallow root has a little bit more of a tonifying quality. So sometimes this kind of emollient or mucilage is too much for somebody. Maybe they don't need that much slimification. So then you would use something, which I often do, use marshmallow root first, because a lot of times when people need moistening, they also might need a little bit of tightening up as well. And this actually tastes good. It's very mild. So Elizabeth, you could put it into juice. You can drink it just plain. It's got a real, kind of sweet, a little bit sweet, kind of pungent flavor that's not at all icky, So you could put it into a smoothie. It makes a good thickener for things like that. So that's another way to get it into a child and or someone that might go ew when you hand them a glass of something. You've got those people that you've experimented on in the past that maybe don't trust something that you hand them in a glass anymore. So that's a good way to put that in. A lot of herbs can be made into things like Jello, but this one probably would lose its mucilage if you put it in with the hot water. So, from there, what time is it? I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the Jurgle raspberry leaf. So earlier I was saying that how much and how often depends on what is happening with the tissues. So it's like paying attention to the change that you're facilitating and helping to find that balance. And then you either don't use it as much, or you use it regularly, or you use it for a short period of time and then you're done. So it's always about what's going on. Is this acute? Is it chronic? Where's the balance between them all? And just kind of working that in. And then as you're thinking about it, herbs are should be like the secondary thing. You want to look at like your food first. If again, that you're eating something that's making your stomach upset and hot, like you really shouldn't be eating a whole lot of hot, spicy foods because you've already got that kind of excited tissue state, then yeah, maybe you're going to have to balance it out when you want that kind of a meal with something more mucilaginous or more cooling, and then play around with how does that work together as a whole system. It's not a standalone sort of band-aid, so to speak. So raspberry leaf, this is raspberry leaf that I gathered this summer. It's one of the very easiest herbs that you can gather and get to know. It's a little bit brittle here. And you can see maybe on the back side, it's a little bit gray color. That's the underside of the leaf. And then the top side is kind of a darker green. That's the top side of the leaf. And raspberry leaf, it's just like a really broad, useful plant for so many people. It's got mildly astringent properties. So in lieu of something like green tea or black tea, something that you wouldn't want the caffeine you could use raspberry leaf as that tonifier that we were talking about. It's really good for tightening up pores in the digestive tract to make food be more usable as it's going through the metabolic process. It's sweet, and it has a lot of minerals, a lot of trace minerals, which is sometimes the things that are missing from our tissues that are helping to hold those patterns of imbalance in place. If we don't have enough of the right balances between the calcium and the potassium and the sodium, we're going to have, variations of muscle issues, twitchy muscles. If we don't have enough calcium, magnesium helps to calm the muscles. We need them both together in proper balance to have a calm body. And raspberry leaf is one of the herbs that has a lot of those trace minerals in there that support us in kind of that food as medicine way. It's used widely by women of all ages. It's a great balancer for foundational hormones, and it's good for men too. So it's not just a women's remedy, and it helps with clearing mucus and freeing up discharge because of that tonifying and astringing property. So it's a really easy one to get and play with and learn about, and a very safe one to practice with and get to know. We're going to talk about tea next. So how many of you have never had horseradish? Anybody? Horseradish is one of the hottest foods that we can use with pretty easy way to find. I'm going to look at this lovely other little. This talks a little bit about, I love horseradish too. I sometimes just kind of eat it by the spoonful. And that tells me that that's when when I need my cold constitution needs to warm up. So when I want to put horseradish like on everything, and I use it a lot with salads and different things like that to balance out that cold feature. If I am having something that's maybe out of season, but I'm still having as part of my dinner. So that's another way that you can think about using and balancing out these different ways that it works. So horseradish is hot, and it has a lot of stimulation. And we know that because when we eat it, it makes us, flush. We can feel that it's moving our blood and diffusing our blood around in our body. It's used for things like poultices and for conditions of like stuck lungs. But you have to be careful with it because it is so hot. It can actually burn your skin. So you never want to put fresh horseradish on your skin without a barrier in between, like a cloth. And you don't really want to leave it on there for a very long time. But if you're having a problem with a cold that will not loosen up, and you're very congested and things can't move, this is a way that they use it topically to help break that up. So it's one way to use it if you don't want to put it in your body because you don't like the taste of it or the way that it feels. Is another way that you can use it. It helps to move the fluids and facilitate the blood. And you can get horseradish that's more mild and play around with that layer of heat, or you can find some that's really, really, really hot, or something like wasabi, which is a Chinese version of of horseradish in a way, and you can experiment with the degrees of heat and what your own body likes. So let's see, what else does he say about it? It's another condition that it's good for, because it is moving and stimulating, is things like rheumatism and arthritis, because it gets those fluids moving in those joints. So be careful with it around your eyes and your skin. All right. We're just getting close to the end here. I want to talk to you a little bit about bitter. So here's another thing that you can do to start playing around with some different flavors. And bitter is drying. What I have in here is just pieces of orange peel. Actually, it's a mix. It's oranges, tangerines, some lemons, all citrus, mostly orange, that I've dried and saved. Really easy to do. And then you can put this in your teas and in different tinctures or infusions. You could make just a plain infusion with the peel itself. And so bitter helps our digestive juices get activated. So bitter is stimulating, and it can help with those, again, too slow digestion, too damp digestion. It's going to stimulate things and get that fire going. So digestive bitters are a really common thing that we will employ when people need to get things moving more, including things like helping the gallbladder notice that it needs to work a little bit more actively to break down oils and fats. So you can easily play around with the orange peel. Now the orange peel, if you've ever taken it off just the fresh orange, the inside white part, you can tell right away that that's bitter and kind of astringent. You can use the fresh sweet peel and get a little bit more of a mild carminative effect. And you can also use just the straight sweet orange juice to, again, go down that path of, I want it a little bit more sweet. I don't need it quite as bitter. I don't need it quite as activating, but the orange is going to help to stimulate that piece of the digestion. And, play around with the differences between what the orange feels like and what it feels like compared to a lemon, and even a tangerine, or some of those other like combination citrus fruits that they make nowadays, that or that we can get nowadays, I should say, to see how that feels. So if you're using the sweet orange itself, you're gonna get a little bit more of just that citric acid and things like that, which is going to impact the pH a little bit differently. The peel has a lot of oil in it, even when it's dried, and that is the part of it, without going into too much detail, that's got the active constituents. So we're getting close to 7 o'clock here. How about a few more questions?
How do herbs with versus the essential oils work? Do they work about the same, or?
Actually, no. Essential oils, I'm gonna go sit back down here for a second, are much, much more concentrated and they are not always that whole plant combination, because they're distilled out. Parts of the plant are distilled out, and usually those are the herbs that have more volatile oil components. And so when you think about comparing an essential oil to like a cup of tea, 1 drop of essential oil, depending on the oil, is equal to 5 to 40 cups. And so they're really, really strong. And they should never be used, this is what I've learned, never be used internally, because they're just too potentized, they're just too concentrated. So you're always wanting to use essential oils topically, and always in a carrier oil. So there's some schools of thought that promote using essential oils internally, but 1 drop of peppermint oil would be like drinking 20 cups of peppermint tea. Now, if you're going to use peppermint tea for an upset stomach, you certainly wouldn't drink 20 cups. So to put a drop of essential oil into your water bottle is really overkill. Using peppermint topically in a carrier oil on your stomach, or here by the back of your neck or behind your ears, is going to help the same thing, but in a whole different way, by going through your olfactory system and hitting some different parts of your sensory system, versus going straight in and impacting the tissue like the tea would. Does
Okay,
that
thank you.
make sense? Any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
My question is, what are some, because I like to use herbs to soak in. What are some like good herbs? Because I use raspberry leaf for my PMS cramps.
Good example. Thank you.
Yeah. I was concerned about moringa. Is that good for like cramps too, or how does it?
I haven't used it a whole lot myself. I've drank it in the past, and I have some friends that really like it, but I think again it's kind of like a personal match,
Okay.
and how that's going to feel for you.
Okay.
Does anybody else have an experience with using moringa that they can contribute?
I use moringa. I think it's pretty mild. It doesn't have a real grainy, earthy greens type of flavor. It's a little bit brighter, and maybe almost like has a very, very soft citrus type of flavor to it. I just find it kind of calming and moistening, but not real strong, just very gentle.
Okay.
It's
So
not
what I'm hearing you
helpful.
say is moistening versus raspberry leaf, which would be more astringing. So that might be 2 things for you to play around with the 2 teas side by side. Is, drink a cup of the raspberry leaf one day, or earlier in the day or so, and then drink the moringa a while later, and see what you notice. Which one does feel like it creates more saliva, which one does make you feel more calm, and experiment that way.
Nice, thank you.
Yeah, thanks for contributing.
Stacy, I have a question.
Okay.
And I missed the first class, and thank you for the information that you share with us this evening. I'm not quite familiar with the concept of dosha. How much different is the concept of dosha with the concept of the yin and yang between hot and cold temperature?
I think there's overlapping theory and principles for sure. Yes. I think when you look at that yin yang piece of it, if you look to the elements in that circle, you know, with the earth and wind and water and fire and then metal, if that makes sense to you, in that theory base, that is going to tell you a lot of the same things.
Yeah, because in the Chinese herbal medicinal, they use that concept a lot.
Yes, yeah. And I think that, you know, in the beginning, when we talked about that the humoral concepts came from Greek medicine, that the doshas come down from Ayurvedic medicine, there's Native American principles that are similar and overlap and are layered, as well as this, the Chinese, traditional Chinese medicine. So I think they like kind of all have dovetail in a way. It's just who you learn it from and what you take away from it. I think I use a little bits from all of them, you know, to make it make sense to me. Sometimes the words might come from Ayurveda, and really I'm talking more about the humors.
Thank you.
Stacey, I was wondering if you would share just a few easy lymphatic drainage ways or herbs to use and how to use them.
Okay, sure. Well, first off, do you know about dry brushing?
Yes,
Okay.
I don't particularly enjoy it, but I do know it.
What don't you like about it?
I don't like the hard brush on my skin. It just kind of hurts.
Okay, get a softer brush,
Mm-hmm.
just a little bit softer brush. It's got to be somewhat firm. Try starting with a washcloth, even just like a rough cloth. And for those of you that don't know, dry brushing stimulates your lymphatic system by helping to facilitate the tissues in the direction that your lymphatic vessels run in your body. It's a very useful daily wellness technique. And on my website, I have a handout right on the homepage that talks about dry brushing and how to do it, and also oil pulling, which if you're not already doing that, that's another way that you can start to stimulate that lymphatic and immune system process. Otherwise, things that you can think about for lymphatics, depending on if you need something a little bit more cooling, you want to look to some herbs like cleavers. Gallium aprine is called. Let me see, I should be typing this here. So cleavers, A-P-A-R-I-N-E, and this should be capitalized to be proper. And I'm hoping I'm spelling that right. Gallium might only have one L at the moment. And then we have calendula. I know that you can get that one for sure in the bulk section at the co-op if they have it. And this is calendula is its first name, and officinalis is its second name, and that's a more warming lymphatic and a little bit more antibacterial. You can think about food as food herbs like parsley is very diaphoretic, so that's going to move stuff a little bit more through the not diuretic through the kidney system, but it will get things moving. French marigold definitely could be a nickname for the calendula. So those two are really easy to find in commerce, the cleavers and the calendula. Cleavers is more cooling, calendula is a little bit more warming, and are both really, like, you can use them with children and elders, and they're very gentle but powerful. And you can just make a tea out of them and just drink it. Yeah.
Thank you. Would you make a tea out of parsley too, or parsley
Yeah,
leaf?
yeah, there's a recipe. So it's and this is going to talk to you more, a little bit more about less lymphatic and more about diuretic, but we'll write it down here anyways. It's Hildegard von Bingen. Let's see. I think that's how you spell it. Parsley, honey, wine. Hildegard was a old herbalist, German herbalist, and she used this when people were suffering from like just like it's so hot, you know, like people that live down south, and like they were just wrung out from the heat and the moisture and things, and this would help them get more energy and toned up energy back.
Thank you.
I have a child who deals with a lot of the sluggish digestion, even to the point where it causes some major upset and vomiting and stuff from the pain of being backed up. How would you, like, what are some herbs that would work really well to help with this gut and get it like toned up? Do you have any recommendations on that?
I'm wondering if tone is the direction to go. That would take just a few more questions, maybe, like, you know, is there spasm involved? Is there, is it sluggish because of dryness versus too gooky, too damp, too mucusy? So those go ahead.
It's probably more on the dry side, and there's definitely spasms when he's having his episode of pain and stuff.
So bay leaf could be nice, mixed in with something that's more mucilaginous. So, you know, try this. You could try the slippery elm. You could try any of those, like the marshmallow root. What else did we say in the chat now?
Yeah, I saw all those and wrote them all down.
You could
But
try
yeah, that was my question regarding the slippery elm.
Yeah. Oh, sure. Got it. I would just try that. It's really not unpalatable. You know, put in some juice or something if you need to do that. There's some different techniques that you can, so if this was my stomach, there's some different manual techniques that you can do that would take a little bit of educating, but are real easy, and you can teach your child how to do on themselves too, which sometimes can help relax that GI tract as things are moving along. And, you know, then there's that whole, what's the essence of that personality? How is that contributing? You know, and depends on the, you know, it's not uncommon for kids at a certain age to have trouble with that for a while as they're growing. Kids between like, 4 and sometimes even like 9 or so can have some challenges there, some
Yeah.
factors.
Would you recommend that I were to go and look up like his dosha constitution or something and just kind of go through that test as if I was him?
How old is he?
He's 8, almost 9.
You could probably do it with them together. They're not difficult. And it would help give him some insights maybe,
Mhm.
and are you noticing that it's a food trigger? Is it something that happens? Is it an allergy? Is there inflammation going on in there?
Yeah.
Is it dairy? Is it, whatever? I'm just throwing that one out there because it's common, but it's, it's another layer to look at.
Okay. I'll keep
Look at
digging.
his tongue. Look at his tongue. See what it looks like. I'm available for consults. So. Well, I think we might be getting closer to wrapping up.
Stacy, would you mind resharing your direct email address?
Sure. At energy.com. So it's Stacy at energyforlifeconnection.com. Not entering. Come on, get in there. Huh. Oh, there it goes. Huh. It won't share.
It's okay. Everyone, I put it in the chat a little while earlier, so it's the same as her website, and you just put
There it goes.
Stacy at in front.
Yeah, and it's the same as my website, so that's easy. My computer is so slow tonight. Okay.
I have a question.
One more.
Hello, it's Brittany.
Hi, Brittany.
Hi, I was wondering, do you do anything like plant walks, or do you do anything like consultations? Or I'm trying to study to actually be a herbalist, and I would like to have a mentor or a person that can just educate me a little more on it, like in private. Do you do things like that, or are there prices involved?
Yes, and yes. So I have a fairly good breakdown of that on my website, and then you can direct message me, email me, or message me through the website, and we can talk more details in that way. And hopefully, again, cross fingers, this spring, and when it warms up, we will be doing actually plant walks for this class, if we can be outside and be together. So definitely, for sure.
All right, thank you. Sounds good.
Oh, and sign up for the newsletter on the blog. That way, anything that I put out there for classes and or like herb information, herb things that I write about, probably quarterly. It's not you won't be getting an email from me every week or anything like that, but you can go on and look at the old writings, and there's some recipes and different herbal information, and just discussion about foraging and things like that.
Yep, thank you.
To answer Elizabeth's question, so what Stacy means by being together is currently, because our classes are, we're not able to hold our classes at the co-op due to the pandemic. So our hopes are that come springtime, we can hopefully have some in-person classes. That being said, if we do offer an in-person class, we would also have a virtual component, because many of our people joining us today are not in the Duluth area.
I kind of forgot about that for a minute. Oh, that would be fun for everybody to be able to come. But yes, we definitely could video it for sure.
All right. So for anybody who missed it or maybe joined us late and would like to have the recordings from either this class or last month's class or both, you can email me directly. That's going to be the easiest way for me to get a hold of everybody at once. And my email is jgilbertson@wholefoods.coop. So wholefoods.coop. And if you're interested in whichever one, just specify what you would like, either last month, this month, or both. And I can make sure that those go out to you. All right, if there's no more questions, I want to say thank you everybody for attending tonight's class. Keep in mind there's one every month at the end of the month, the last Tuesday of each month at 6 p.m. So we'll have, I believe, 7 more. So make sure you sign up for all of them, because if you sign up for one, that doesn't necessarily mean you've signed up for all. They're all individual. So hopefully everyone can go ahead and do that through Eventbrite or through our website at wholefoods.coop/classes. Thank you so much,
Yes.
Stacy. This was a great class.
I look forward to hearing about any experiments people might be doing between now and then with their learning the different constitutions of their new plant friends.
All right. Well, thank you again, everybody. Happy New Year. Enjoy the rest of your evening, and we'll see
Yes.
y'all in a month.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Happy holidays. Goodbye.
Thank you. Take care.